I do want to start today's shiur just with mentioning the loss. So Rav David Feinstein, Hagoin, Hatzadik Rav David Feinstein was an old man, and nobody lives forever. And sometimes when a Gadol B'Yisrael passes away, people ask, how old was he? And that is an irrelevant question, because Chazal teach us, Kosha silukum shel tzadikim kesreifas beis Elokeinu. And in the time of Chorban Beis Hamikdash, no one asked, how old was this house? 400 years old. Houses aren't forever. A Beis Hamikdash is not a structure, it's not a house, it's a Beis Hamikdash. And when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, it wasn't relevant how old was the Beis Hamikdash. A Gadol B'Yisrael is a Gadol B'Yisrael, and it's not relevant how old he was. Gedolei Yisrael al Megan on the door. Gedolei Yisrael, Daton misyasheves aleim, Talmidei Chachomim kol zman shemaskinem. And they give us guidance, they give us psak, they show us the way, and they are Megan on the door. So it truly is a great loss. I remember Rav Moshe very well. And Rav David was in many ways a mirror with his anava, with his tznius, with his clarity. No one achieved the greatness of Rav Moshe, who was a yochid b'dor. But Bavua, like Yeshua ben Nun and Moshe Rabbeinu, it's a great loss for Klal Yisrael in the entire world, not only for American Jewry. He should be a Melech Yosha and Klal Yisrael. We'll miss him terribly. So we all need Tanchumen. Shakadosh Baruch Hu Yagen Aleinu, and he should be a Melech Yosha for Klal Yisrael. So today we start learning Meleches Mavashel, and Meleches Mavashel is one of the most fascinating and complicated malachas of the Lametes Malachas Shabbos. And today, which is only the first shiur we will be giving on Mavashel, we will be, first of all, trying to define the Hagdoras HaMalacha, but as is so common in Hilchos Shabbos, the Halacha L'Maaseh and the Hagdoras are intertwined and so closely related, and therefore we also will discuss Halacha L'Maaseh questions today beyond the basic Hagdora and definition of Meleches Mevashel. Many Achronim quote the Rambam, Perik Tes Halacha Vav in Hilchos Shabbos, dealing with Meleches Mevashel, and I quote the Lashon of the Rambam, Kloloi shel Dovar, Bein Sherifu Gof Kosher Be'esh, Oy Shehikshe Guf Rach, Harei Ze Chayev Mishum Mevashel. If he softened a hard object, or he hardened a soft object, in both cases, Chayev Mishum Mevashel. And some Achronim understood that in this halacha, the Rambam gives us the basic Hagdora. What is the Hagdora of Bishul? Rifu Guf Kosher, O Hikshe Guf Rach. And I think that is a mistake, as I will explain in the next 15 minutes. But where does this Hagdora come from? Rifu Guf Kosher, O Hikshe Guf Rach. That's the very well-known Gemara Shabbos Ayin Daladum and Beis. Haiman disho de sichtele atuna chayev mishum mevashel. If he throws a piece of wood, a board, into an oven, not into the fire. If you throw wood into the fire, it'll be consumed, it'll be burned, it will be turned into energy. He puts the wood in an oven, not directly in the fire. So the moisture seeps out and the wood becomes harder than it was before. What's the revusa, the Gemara asks? And the Gemara says, he's just hardening it. Now, in the process of making the wood harder, first it becomes softer. And in the stage in which it becomes softer, Rashi explains that is the stage Chayev Mishum Mevashel. this board, this piece of wood won't become hardened, only if first it becomes softened. I'm not a scientist, but the way I understand it, there's moisture in wood. So the first part of the process is bringing the moisture out, and in that stage, the wood as if becomes somewhat softer, and when the moisture comes out and it evaporates, then the wood has less moisture and it is hardened. So Rashi explains, the Meleches Bishul is in stage number 1, when the wood becomes softer. According to Rashi, we would agree only to part of the Rambam. Rifo guf kusha, that is mevashel. Hikshe gufrach would not be mevashel, according to Rashi, because Rashi explains it is in stage number 1 when the wood becomes softer. It is that stage in which chayav mishum mevashel. But the Rambam's interpretation is either beinim rifa guf kusha or hikshe gufrach chayav mishum mevashel. So why isn't the chayav shtayim? If the Gemara says mir perofa v'hoder komet, so it makes this wood softer and then he makes it harder, why isn't the chayav shtayim? The answer is a very simple one. At the end of the day, all Malachas Shabbos are tikkun. So the tikkun is only the end product, the result which he was trying to achieve. The reason he's putting this wood into the oven is to make it tougher and harder, not to make it softer. And therefore, it's only one tikkun, so we only have one chatos. So how does the Rambam explain mir perofa v'hoder komet? He's making it harder. Hikshe gufra chayav mishum mevashel. Why does the Gemara need to say mir perofa v'hoder komet? The Lechem Mishnah explains. The Rambam says, Hikshe gufrach, rifo guf kusha. But if he takes a hard object and he makes it even harder, that would not be mevashel. Hikshe guf rach. And that's why the Gemara needs to say, he takes a hard piece of wood and he makes it even tougher, even harder. That's not mevashel. It is only because mir perofa v'hoder komet chayev mishum mevashel. But it still would be somewhat strange. Mir perofa v'hoder komet. But even the stage of mir perofa doesn't become soft, doesn't become like jelly, doesn't become the wood, the board doesn't become like a banana. It still is hard. It becomes somewhat softer and then it is hardened. So l'chayr it's a doichik, the pshat of the Lechem Mishnah. The Mishnah Brura in Sha'ar Tzion has an amazing pshat in the Rambam, but it goes against all the other interpretations of the Rambam, all the Noisakerim of the Rambam. But to me, the Mishnah Brura is very appealing. Shin Yud Ches, Sha'ar Tzion, Siv Koten Daled. According to the Mishnah Brura, there's no Machlokes Rambam and Rashi at all. And when the Rambam writes, Bein sheik sheguf rach, oy sherip beguf kusha chayav mishum mevashel, the reason hikshe guf rach chayav mishum mevashel is because first it becomes softer before it becomes harder. But the Rambam has the same pshat in Rashi. It's an appealing pshat, but it goes against all the Noisakelim, and it goes against Pashtus Loshen HaRambam. The Rambam does suggest two different objectives. Bein sherifa guf kusha, or hikshe guf rach. Hikshe guf rach doesn't seem to be the same as rifa guf kusha. So the classical interpretation of the Rambam is either of the two. According to Rashi, it is only rifa guf kusha. But once again, would that be the fundamental agdura of Meleches Mevashel? That is what many understood from the Rambam. I think it's a mistake. And I have two gewaltige kashas on this Havana in the Rambam. Cooking an egg boiling an egg, a hard-boiled egg, is that min ha-Torah? Yes, it is. The Gemara meforeshes. The Avram Chesed mit Beis in Shabbos. So, according to Rashi, why would it be a malacha d'oraisa? If the fundamental Agdora is a rifu gof kusha, he's not making the egg softer. The egg has a liquid form. And when you boil it, it only becomes harder. The more you boil it, the more solid it becomes. Lefi Rambam nicha, bein shehiksha guf rach. But according to Rashi, and according to the Mishnah Berurah's Pshat in the Rambam, this kasha is relevant to the Rambam as well. He is hardening a very soft object. The egg is liquid, and it becomes a solid. The longer it's boiled, the harder it becomes. So why would that be a malacha d'oraisa? The other question I have, Rambam Perek Tes Halacha Aleph, Bishul Mayim. Once again, Mefurish Barambam, it's a malacha d'oraisa. So when you boil water, it is neither hikshe guf rach nor rifo guf kusha. Some later Achronim asked this question, and one of the great Polish Gedolim, pre-Holocaust, writes in his Sefer that he actually spoke to chemists, and when you boil water, it becomes softer. That's nonsense. I don't know what he spoke to a chemist about, but Malacha Shabbos, it depends on human experience and your human senses. You don't see the water becoming neither softer nor harder. It was water and it stayed water. It was liquid, it stayed liquid. It's exactly the same. It's hotter, but it's not harder. So why would there be a malacha d'oraisa? And therefore, lani es daiti. Hagdoras hayesod shel meleches mavashel, the fundamental Hagdora, is neither makshe guf rach nor hikshe rifo guf kusha. 4 words: tikun hadavar b'chayim hu eish, using fire to achieve your goals. Tikun hadavar. And the reason I say davar is because Bishul doesn't necessarily refer to Oichlin. So the classical type of Bishul is Bishul Samemoni. That was in the Mishkan. In the list of Lamed Tes Malachas, Seder Apas, Oifa. Oifa and Mevashel are the same malacha, whether it's baking or cooking. But we also learn in this Gemara, I just dealt with a few minutes ago, Haiman de Shod Sichte La'atuna. We're dealing with a piece of wood, and it's bishul d'oraisa. Tikun hadavar b'chayim hu eish. So when you cook water, that is the tikkun of water. You're not making it harder, you're not making it softer. You're making it better. You're making it fitting for consumption. Once upon a time, in the days of Chazal, nobody drank cold water. Water was consumed hot. And the tikkun of water is only making it hot. Whether it's l'rechitza or l'shtia. So that is the tikkun. And the Gdor of Meleches Mavashel is tikun hadavar b'chayim hu eish. So where does bein sherifa guf kusha or sheiksha guf rach come into the picture? It's a revusa. When you cook food, the tikkun is very fundamental. It becomes fitting for consumption, which wasn't before. Raw meat, raw fish is not fitting for consumption. So the tikkun is a very fundamental and substantial one. B'haiman de Shod Sichte La'atuna, the revusa is, even though it is not a very substantial tikkun, but still, if you want it harder, the malacha is hikshe guf rach. If you need it softer, that is also defined as a tikkun. So even though the bishul doesn't fundamentally change the dover hamizbashal, unlike foodstuffs, when it's cooked, it's fitting for consumption. It wasn't fitting to eat or to drink before. So that is a fundamental transformation of the dover hamizbashal. When you're just making an object harder or softer, it's not really transformational. It's not really a fundamental change. Afal piken, it is defined as a tikkun chayev mishum mevashel. But that is not the fundamental agdora of mevashel. V'hu raya. Perik Tes Hilchos Shabbos deals with mevashel. Halacha Aleph Beis Gimel Daled Hey deal with various different halachas of bishul. It is only in halacha Vav that we find this agdora in the Rambam. Klolei shel davar ben sheripa guf kusha be'esh oy shehikshu gufrach harei chayev mishum mevashel. The first 5 halachas deal with bishul oichelen. The Rambam doesn't need a definition. It is poshet betachlis apshitas. Tikkun hadavar b'choim hu eish. You make food or drinks fitting for consumption. You make them edible. You make them re'ui l'shtir. That in itself is the agdora of mevashel. It is only when we're dealing with wood, not food. And the Rambam brings the halacha of Haiman Deshod Sichte La'atuna. And the Rambam also brings the din of zefet. So when you heat is zefet, what is zefet? Is zefet tar? That gooey black substance. So when the zefet cools off, it becomes solid. When you boil it, it becomes like a paste. And that also fits into the Hagdorah, Bein Sherifu Gof Kusher. So the Revusa is, when we're not dealing with foodstuffs, but with zefet, with tar, or with wood, or with metals, and the tikkun we are trying to achieve is making it harder or making it softer. When we're dealing with wood, the objective is to make it tougher, harder. When we're dealing with tar, the objective, our goal is to make it softer because we want to spread it on the roof. You can't do that when it's hard. You need to make it into somewhat of a paste. You should be able to smear it onto the roof or an other surface. Bein sherifu guf kusha be'esh, or shehikshu gufrach, chayev mishum mevashel, even though that's the only tikkun. It's not such a fundamental tikkun like cooking food, but still it's a tikkun, and therefore, chayev mishum mevashel. So to me, it's a milsa de pshita, shehamarpe guf kusha, or shehikshu gufrach. It's not chayev mishum mevashel only if it is needed. That is the tikkun shel hadavar. That is the objective he means to achieve. Only then is a chayev mishum mevashel. So my basic interpretation lets us understand why hamavashel beitza chayev mishum mevashel pshita. Hamavashel mayim chayev mishum mevashel. So by beitza, he's not making a hard object softer. According to Rashi, sichte la'atuna, why is it chayev mishum mevashel? By mayim, he's not making the water neither harder nor softer. Why is it chayev mishum mevashel? Because we're dealing with food, and not only with food, but that is the tikkun. Tikkun hadavar b'choim hu eish. Those 4 words are the key, the fundamental key to meleches mevashel. I would go beyond that, and I wrote in my sefer, both in my sefer and Shabbos, which is one of the first forum that I published many, many years ago. I think it was Memtet, 33 years ago, that the Sefer and Shabbos came out. I was a younger man. But I stressed this point in various tshuvas since. I think hiksha guf rach, or rifa guf kusha, doesn't apply to oichlen at all. It only applies to toldes mevashel. Zefet, eitz are toldos. The av melacha of mevashel is food. It is only when we deal with toldos that we find this agdora. Rifa guf kusha or hiksha guf rach. Prima Godim Shin Yud Ches, Eishel Avrom Sif Kut Lamed Zayin. This is just an amusing anecdote. When I was a younger man, the only Prima Godim we had was in the old Shulchan Aruchs. And I still use the Arba Chelke Shulchan Aruch that I got as a gift from my Kala and my Shver when I was a Chassan. I'm still using the same shas I got when I was a chassan. So in Koilel, I use the new shas, the Oiz V'Hodor and the Friedman, but at home, I still use my old shas and my old Shulchan Aruch that have been with me for tens of years, for decades, and I love them. So in the old Shulchan Aruch, Prima Godim, Eishel Avrom, Shin Yud Ches Lamed Zayin, Prima Godim writes, when you cook chicken, hamevashel of, afal pi she'ein bishul acha bishul, chayav mishum mevashel, because he is marpe guf kusha. Cooked meat is softer than raw meat. We all know that. The longer the meat is cooked, it becomes even softer. So this Prima Godim goes against my chiddush. We're dealing with food. And nevertheless, the Prima Godim says, Mar beguf kusha chayev mishum mevashel. And I wonder, does he want to make it soft? He just wants to cook it. It should be tasty. It's a total mistake. And in the new editions, all of them of the Prima Godim is dealing with oiferes, lead, not oif. So maybe in an early edition, it was ayin with a vav, with a gerish. I don't know what a gerish is in English. That little pintala was abbreviated. So some printer thought it's oif, but it is clear from the context he's speaking about oiferes, which is lead, like many other metals. In the production of steel, of iron, first, in very high temperatures, it is turned to liquid, and only then is it hardened as iron or steel. And that is the way to produce metals. And that is what the Prima Godim is dealing with, marpe guf kusha, and that is why he is chayiv. So I just saw a note that a gerish is an apostrophe. So obviously, in some early edition of the Prima Godim, it was ayin involved with an apostrophe, and a printer mistakenly took it to be oif, and it actually is a feres. But like kosher mida. So it definitely fits into my approach. Shmira Shabbos Kil Chasa, Perek Aleph, Ha'ora Kuf Pei Gimel. He deals with the question, could you use soup almonds on Shabbos? So when you put soup almonds into boiling soup, in a very short while, they will become soft. Is that a problem of marpe guf kusha? Shmir Shabbos Kerchos, I don't remember what his maskana is, but I think he quotes the Pshom Zalman. To me, it's not a problem at all. For two reasons. His objective is not to make them soft. I think most people prefer them crispy and not soft. But his objective is not to make them soft. It just adds taste and flavor to the soup. Some people like it. And therefore, that's not the tikkun. It's not our objective. It's not our will. So there is no tikkun. And if there is no tikkun, that is not defined as mevashel. But according to my personal opinion, it's food. And in food, hardening or softening has no significance. The only Haggadah of Bishul in food is making food fitting for consumption. And that is why Shiur Bishul by solid food is Machal Ben Drusai. By water, Yad Soled is by. Because that is the fundamental stage in which they are fitting for consumption. So regarding foodstuffs, the entire idea and concept of Rifa Gof Kusha, Veiksha Gufrach, is not relevant at all. And therefore, I don't see any problem in using soup almonds. There might be a problem of mavashal, so we're dealing with a kli sheni, maybe even a kli shlishi, because the question is whether a matzeket is a kli sheni. What's a matzeket? The big spoon that you put into the bowl of soup, and you use that big spoon to pour into your plate, a ladle. So maybe the ladle is a kli sheni, and your plate is a kli shlishi. Kli sheni ain't a mavashal. I wrote in my tshuvas that the halacha is in accordance to those poskim as the machlokes Mishnah Berurah and Chazanish. Maybe we'll speak about it at a coming shiur. Kalei Bishul, kli sheni is mavashal, but kli shlishi, my opinion is we could be makel even by Kalei Bishul. And I'm not convinced at all that soup almonds are Kalei Bishul. Why would they be? But anyway, I don't think there's any problem putting soup almonds into your soup, even though you're making them softer, because our intention is not to make them softer. It's just more, the soup is tastier and more appealing. How about making toast on Shabbos? So I'm not speaking about using your electrical toaster. But many people like their chalas when they're crisp and warm. So sometimes you put chalas on matzahs on the Shabbos platter. Many are machmar not directly on the platter, but on the pots that are on the platter. And you're making them somewhat harder, sometimes almost like toast. Would that be a problem of marpe guf, of makshe gufrach? Because the challah of the matzah are somewhat soft, and you want to make them harder and crisper, and that is your objective. Contrary to soup almonds, we have no interest in making them softer. It's just a byproduct. It just happens. But when you put your challah on top of the platter, on the pots that are on the platter, and they're metal and they're hot, and in a few minutes your challah will be warm and crisp, maybe it is our objective not only to make it warmer, but to make it crisp, and that is to make it harder, just like making toast. So that would be a tikkun. But once again, according to my opinion, when we're dealing with food that is not defined as mevashel, it is only making food edible, fitting for consumption, that is mevashel. And therefore, the challah of the matzah you put on your platter was fitting for consumption in the first place. You like it better when it's crisp. That is not mevashel. And therefore, there would be no problem putting your chalas on top of the pots on the platter. And I do it. I actually do it every Shabbos. So according to my opinion, when we're dealing with food, marpe guf kusha, makshe gufrach is not relevant. It is only found in the Rambam in Halacha Vav. Not in Aleph Beis Gimel Daled Hey. Halacha Vav deals with tar, wood, other things that are told us mevashel. It's not relevant when we're dealing with food. And I want to bring 3 rayas. I think it's dvorim nechonim misvara, but we always feel more comfortable, especially when we say a kula, if we could prove the kula. Shabbos Kuf Mem Hey Amud Beis. Kol shabo b'chamin b'yerev Shabbos, shoyre noise b'chamin b'Shabbos. Kol shabo b'chamin b'yerev Shabbos means it was already cooked erev Shabbos. You could soak it in hot water on Shabbos. Ein bishul lacha bishul. That is the source of ein bishul lacha bishul. Especially, we're dealing with a klisheni. Klisheni ain't a mevashel. It is only forbidden when we're dealing with kulyas hu ispanin, which is the ultimate kale bishul. Some of the concepts we might be discussing in our coming shiur, in one of the coming shiurim, and I can't explain every nekuda. I'll call upon him. Anything that was cooked Erev Shabbos, you could once again put into a kli with warm water on Shabbos. Ein bishul lacha bishul. Rashi writes, what is his objective? Why does he want shoyren oisoi b'Shabbos? Kedei sheyehei moach. It's too hard. We want it to soften. We want it to melt. So his intention is laharpois guf kusher. Why wouldn't that be mevashel b'Shabbos? Marpa guf kusher. This proves marpa guf kusher regarding oichlin is not relevant. It is only making food fitting for consumption. And this food was already cooked out of Shabbos. It is fitting for consumption in the first place. And therefore, there would be no issa. Shin Yud Ches Siv Daled in the Ramah. I need to quote the Lashon of the Ramah, so I'm going to stand up for a moment, just bring a Mishnah Brura, because it's so important.
We can put it on the screen if it's easier for you. Otherwise, it's going to put the Ramah on the screen.
Okay, we could have it on the screen for the Tzibur, but I just took a Mishnah Brura out and Shin Yud Ches Siv Daled, and I'm quoting the Lashon of the Ramah. Tafshe Shunas Basel Kol Sorka, the Mechaber writes, Yesh bo mishum bishulim nitztanen. So the Ramah, in the continuation of this Sif. That's the halacha I quoted before. Kuf mem hey mesechet Shabbos. So the Ramah comments. Kol dover kusha she'eino ra'ui lechol klal below shriya, also l'shroisa b'Shabbos. They have a gemar malacha. So the Ramah writes, anything that is too hard, she'eino ra'ui la'achila klal below shriya, also l'shroisa b'Shabbos. And why is that? Gemar malacha. There's a big discussion in the Achronim. Does the Ramah mean makeh bepatish, or does he mean mevashel? That's a big discussion. Bi'alocha, on the spot, even though the lesson of the Ramah is gemar malacha, most Achronim maintain there is no makeh bepatish by oichlin. What he means is mavashel. Hanorgeya le'inyanenu, once again, the Lashon of the Ramah. Kol dova kusha she'eino ra'ui la'achila klal below shliya, also l'shloisa, which means, if it's a dova kosher, but it's ra'ui la'achila. Even if it's ra'ui la'achila al yedei adchak, it's not really appealing. It's not mamish ra'ui, totally fitting for consumption. Ra'ui la'achila de'achak. There is no bishul. Even though his clear intention is, it's too hard. The reason it's not ru'ui l'achila, it's hard. We want to make it soft, but it's not bishul. It is only davar kusha she'eino ra'ui lechol klal below shliya she'oseh la'shloisoi. That is gemar malacha. Either makeh bepatish or mevashel. But the Ramah makes it very clear. It is only in a case she'eino ra'ui la'achila klal. And why? Davar kusha. So this proves beyond doubt, if it's a davar kosher, and we soak it in hot water because we want to make it softer, it should be more appealing. As long as it's roy lachila, there is no bishul. Ein bishul acha bishul. Even though we have a clear intention of making it softer. And the third raya is this very same siman, Shin Yud Ches, because Shin Yud Ches deals entirely with meleches mevashel. Sif Tet Zayin, mutar liten infanda keneged oesh b'mokum shiat soledes, af al pi shashumin sheba shenikra shchoiza v'nimoach. Kolshkin kederes yesh beroitev shenikra k'shashumin nimoach einoi be'en deshori. So, shuman, fat, niklash. So when it's cooled off, it becomes solidified, it becomes solid. And we put it keneged u'esh, we want it to dissolve and to become more liquidy, softer. And the Shulchan Aruch says it's mutar. That would not be mevashel. Ein bishul acha bishul. Once again, we have a clear intention to make it softer. Kolshken on our screen, kederes yesh baroitev shenikrash. Kishashumen imoyach ein ben deshori. Yesh machmirim na'agu lahachmio. But in the race of the Shulchan Aruch, no question that it is not defined as meleches mevashel. The reason yesh machmirim is just noilad. It has nothing to do with mevashel. It would not be defined as bishul, even though it has a clear intention of making it softer. So these are the three sources which prove my fundamental yesod. When we're dealing with oichlin and mashkin, makshe guf rach, marpa guf kusha are not the definition of mevashel. And therefore, I don't think there would be any problem making toast. I don't mean making toast in a toaster, but putting challah or matzah or bread or cake on a Shabbos platter. I'm not dealing with putting it directly on the platter. That might be a problem of nesina lachatchila, gerufa viktume. That has to do with the sugyas of Shiur v'atmona. But if you put it on top of a pot that's on the platter, and your intention is to make it warmer and crisper, that would not be a problem. La'anius daiti. So today, we dwelt with the yesodis of meleches mevashel. What is mevashel? And I made my opinion clear. It is only by toldas bishul, other objects that are not oichlin and mashkin, that we learn from the sugya hai man deshoda sichta latuna chayev bishul mevashel. When we're dealing with food and drinks, it is just making them ra'ui la'achila, ra'ui l'shtiya. And this is a choshev yesod. So coming back to the fundamental hanocha, the fundamental yesod, the hagdor of meleches mevashel is tikkun hadavar, making it fitting for consumption. The Rambam writes, Kol davar she'eino tzorech bishul, ein chayaven olav mishum mevashel. And this is a huge discussion in Achrayim. Rebbe Kiva Eger maintains that cooking fruits or vegetables that many people eat as they are, as nature produces them. So there are many vegetables that are commonly cooked, but they're also consumed raw. Peppers, tomatoes, many other vegetables, or fruits. We cook apples, we cook pears, but we also eat raw apples and pears. According to the Kiva Eger, there would be no bishul d'oraisa. Others argue, b'chalalim the egg leital and many others. No. Of course it would be a bishul d'oraisa. The Rambam is referring to oil. or similar things to oil, in which cooking would not fundamentally change and transform the oil to a different form, unlike fruits and vegetables. It's just making the oil hot, and when it's going to cool off, it's going to be the same as it was. That is like water. It is only by water that the Rambam maintains that would be Bishul D'Oraisa, not by other things. Maybe we will further discuss this question in one of our coming shiurim. So I also saw a question presented about sous vide. So in the coming shiur, or maybe in another one, I don't know exactly how many shiurim are allocated to Meleches Mavashel. We would deal with many modern day questions regarding Bishul, many different forms of Bishul. We will deal with microwave ovens. So the question of microwave ovens is more relevant by Bosa B'Cholov or Bishul Akim than by Shabbos, because Shabbos, you can't use the oven for other reasons. You can't put on the oven when you open the door to put in whatever you want to warm or cook. When you close that door, you need to put on the oven, and that would be activating an electrical system, which is also in any event. So the question whether microwave ovens would be defined as bishul is more relevant regarding the two other areas in which bishul is a halachic issue, and that is bishul nachri and bishul basa b'cholav, in which is not only to eat basa b'cholav, but also to be mevashel. So in the coming shiurim, we will define the question of microwave ovens, sous vide. I also want to discuss at greater length making coffee or tea, which is a fascinating halachic discussion, and many other issues which are negei halacha l'maisa, which we will deal with in our upcoming shiurim. What was important to me in today's shiur is just a basic definition. What is mevashel, and the distinction between bishul by machonim and bishul by other objects, which are bishul d'oraisa, but they are told as mevashel. And in my opinion, what I say is a chiddush, because many present-day poskim deal with these issues of making toast and using soup amins, as I quoted. And I think my approach is a derech mechudeshes. It's a chiddush, but I feel it very strongly, and as I've proved from the two different sugyas. So coming back to the sugya in Ted Zayin, Sif Ted Zayin Shin Yud Ches, I'm aware that the Chayodim asked the question. And in Nishmas Odom, Chayodim, Nishmas Odom, Klal Chof, Sivav, the Chayodim deals with the question, why wouldn't it be mevashel mitzad marpeguf kusha? So the Chayodim has his own chiddush, and he says, marpeguf kusha is only something that beteva was kosher, and you make it soft, or the other way around. But something that was lechatchila liquid, and it froze into a solid form, bringing it back to its original form, that would not be mevashel. I question why. If it's a tikkun, why wouldn't it be mevashel? I can't say the Chayodim doesn't make sense. Makes sense. But I think my approach is more appealing. And it also is miyashiv what we ask from Shabbos Kuf Memei Kol Shabo B'Chamen Mi'erev Shabbos, because the Chayodim's approach would not be miyashiv that question. So, Elu Dvorenu Ayom. This is the fundamental yesod that I wanted to share, and in the lengthy discussion in Minchas Osher on Meleches Mevashel, I also dealt with the Chasam Sofer, which is a yesod klali, not only Mevashel, but a yesod klali in Hilchos Shabbos, that any melacha that is performed and the object in which the malacha is performed becomes non-existent al yedei malacha. For instance, mevashel, when you have a candle, which is basa b'cholav, could you light that candle? And the Tshuvas Chasam Sofer, very well-known Tshuva, says, regarding Shabbos, that would not be mevashel because you're mevashel the solid, turning it into liquid, but that liquid is drawn into the fire and it is absorbed and turned into energy. So the result of the malacha is not tangible. That would not be a malacha regarding Hilchos Shabbos. Maybe we will further discuss this some Sofer, but it not really is a concept in mevashel, but rather a general concept of Malachas Shabbos, and therefore I'm not sure that I will get back to discuss it. So I think we discussed the Yesod of Malachas Mevashel and some halacha l'maaseh questions, and it was a pleasure to be with you once again, like every week in the past few months, and I look forward to being with you many times in the coming few weeks. Yasher koyach to all of you. Yasher koyach Reb Shlomo. We should all be zeicher lahagel Torah u'la'adira.
Thanks to the Rav. As the Rav indicated, there will be a whole bunch of other series of Shiur and Bishul. The answer to your question will depend to a large degree on the Rav himself, how many topics you wish to divide this to. I think it was discussed that next week, even though, as Rav mentioned, microwave is not so negay l'maaseh practically, but it's negay thematically. So the Rav will discuss that form. Another form of cooking. I'm going to have to get from the Rav the simanim in the Tshuvas Minchas Asher, which are negay to this. We'll get that. Okay. We'll get that later. And you'll tell me what else you'd like to discuss.
The discussion about microwaves is extremely important, even though it's not so negay l'halacha, but it touches on Yesodis and Derech Malacha, and therefore I do want to discuss it at length. And B'ezrat Hashem, that'll be in the coming Shiur.
Okay, so we will get
Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
Kol tov.
We will reconvene tomorrow. Some of you have come on late because of watching the live stream of Levi, which ended right at 11 o'clock. Tomorrow at 11, we will continue our Hagdama to Hilchos Bishul. I am aware that concepts were put on the table today, which we didn't get a chance to discuss. We didn't get a chance to look at all the examples. It's Ramah and Mishabura, which is attached, which we will tomorrow. We will continue our Hagdama to Hilchos Bishul in the course of this week. On Tuesday, Rav Spitzer will discuss some of the questions of what the Agdara of Malachas Bishul is, including this some cipher and the candle issue, which the Rav just mentioned in passing. On Wednesday, Rav Nissen Kaplan will discuss Peldais Avesh, Begeh to Daidei Shemesh. And on Thursday, we will introduce questions of B'Yesod Malachas Bishul from Rabbi Kala. So we will be using both this week and next, a two-part Shiur. Introduction this week, and next week he's going to go into the many major Yesodis of Bishul Achar Bishul, Kedarka B'Kodesh. Okay, everybody, so I'll see you tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Everybody have a good day.